Hi, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Legal Marketing Happy Hour with myself, Lindsay Marty. I'm the owner and founder of Above the Bar Marketing.
I'm Jim Hayes, the Chief Growth Officer for Above the Bar Marketing.
Today, we are going to discuss a topic that comes up quite often with our current clients and clients that are coming to work with us. And that is the topic of changing your firm name, firms dissolving, firms merging, and how do you handle that online so that the correct information shows up? And typically the first conversation that we have with clients is all around the website, the domain name, who gets to keep that, who owns that. And so, Jim, what typically is your recommendation when it comes to a firm and their domain name?
You don't want to change domain names very often. And so the trick is, when we're going to change this, can we just change it one more time? Can this be the domain that we retire with? And so putting a lot of people's name in that domain, of course, is going to decrease the probability you're going to get to stick with it forever. Initials are great, especially when you have another partner or another attorney that leaves. Usually those initials don't mean anything except for the people in the firm. And so the general potential new client or prospect or someone who's been referred to you that sees your domain name, even if the letters don't make sense, it still will be clear that that's your website. And so that's usually the first thing that we tell them to go with, unless, of course, they've got a keyword branded type of domain. And that's usually when you get in the case, what you brought up, of who gets to keep the domain. And so if it's like personalinjuryattorneywisconsin.com, somebody's really going to want that. And so that's part of the negotiation tools is, if there's a separation in the business, that can be considered as part of the assets.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about how the age of the domain comes into play and why that's important.
If you look at the age of a domain as kind of, as we grow as human beings and we gain more wisdom and we're more potentially, we should be more respected or more credible in a particular industry. That's how Google looks at domains. The longer a website's been around, that's been doing the right things, that's got a lot of current value it's delivering to Google's users, the people who are doing the search, that website's being found and people like it, they enjoy it, they don't bounce right away, so they're finding the right content. Google's going to reward that domain with more authority. And that authority is the real world version of credibility. And so the more value you start putting into a domain, you really don't want to change it because Google finds it incredibly credible at the moment. And so to start over with a brand new domain, Google's not going to know who you are, and it's going to take a little time to build up that trust again.
What would your recommendation be for a firm that wanted to have a geo-specific domain name, like Madison, Wisconsin lawyers?
There's a lot of scenarios where that works out really well, especially for firms that do a lot of branding, a lot of marketing offline as well as online, because then there's the brain recognizes, it's seen that domain on a billboard, now it sees it online. And so your conversion is a little bit higher because there's a little bit of recognition from your other marketing efforts. But you've got to be careful that you don't want to tie yourself down to maybe a practice area that you don't intend on being in for the next 40 years. Or you're in a medium-sized to small town or metro. It's really hard to find new clients outside of that market if the domain name includes a smaller town that's not in the town that they're in. And so you probably should think about setting your regional area that you're going after, either at the state level or in a very big metro. Certainly wouldn't recommend anything, I don't know, to pick an arbitrary number, 100,000 people and below.
Yeah, I've seen firms create a domain name that's geo-specific, and then they're like, oh, actually, we also want to practice in Chicago. Well, that domain name is not going to do well in downtown Chicago if it's Madison Lawyers. So, yeah,
Or clear, right? Or they get really small.
Right. So, yeah, the first step really is choosing the firm name and then choosing the domain name that's going to be the right fit for your firm.
And they don't have to be the same, right? So your firm name and your new domain name, they don't have to match up, and there could be initials in there, and that's okay. You don't have to solve all these problems at once or at all.
Mm-hmm. Now tell me about how I have a website, but I'm changing my name. How I would still keep some of the authority while the other site is building credibility with Google.
There's two questions in there. One is the how, we can repoint that domain, and that domain can share in some of that credibility. But the other part is, while that website is regaining part of that trust, that credibility that it may have lost during a redirect, and it may have dipped a little bit, and it should bounce back if you do the right things. But what are you going to do to replace the calls and the potential leads that were coming in from that website that Google loved? And
Mhm.
so while that website is starting to earn that credibility again, it might be a good idea to put that on a little bit of life support and buy some ads, some paid ads, to help boost up those numbers for a little bit while that website starts to regain its authority. Because that's the real world version of what happens, right? There's the search engine optimization, internet marketers, what we have to worry about. But what do you have to worry about?
Mhm.
Right. And that's the phone ringing and dollars coming in. And can't forget about that.
Yeah. And that's where I would typically recommend some branded pay-per-click. You don't want to lose any authority and you want to make sure that the new name shows up. Just bid on that new firm name to show up for every single search.
Hey, and it's also good to do those type of searches to see who's running a brand campaign on your name.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's shady, but like
Yeah,
there's
it
people
is
here in Michigan that do it all the time.
not a
We
great
should post a
practice.
list of those people.
Exactly. And those clicks, typically when you're bidding on your own name, are very low. So the budget for a branded PPC campaign is typically not very expensive to do and can be really effective. So we've got the firm name, we've got the domain. Now we have to purchase it. So you can go to any domain registrar, GoDaddy, any of them, and see if it's available. 9 times out of 10, the cost will be very low to purchase one. But if you're purchasing a premium domain, sometimes those can get upwards of 500 plus. Have you seen any
Well, how about this? All of the .coms, all of the .nets are taken for what you want. Now what do you do?
.law?
Right? And like before, that wasn't even an option.
Mhm,
Like that, there's so many whatever industry that exists out there. And we have clients having tremendous success with a .law.
mhm,
So that opens up actually a whole new bunch of prospective domains, because before, the very keyword ones that people wanted, they hadn't been available since 2002. Like
mhm,
when the potential attorney may have been like in middle school, right? So
mhm.
now with .laws, there may be some cool domains that you might want to pick up, and that
Mhm.
might be an option.
And that is a premium domain. So those will be, more than 11.99 on GoDaddy, but still
Well,
worth it.
it's like 50 bucks. I just registered one. They're not bad. Now, unless
I
it's like
just
a super
registered one
premium
that
one.
was 500. So I think
Ooh,
it depends on what comes
it
before
does.
the .law. Yeah.
Car accident law, that one's gonna be up there.
hmm we've chosen the firm name, we chose the domain name. Now we're moving into how do we clean up everything that's out there for the old firm names?
Yeah, so while we're doing that, I think, that's step 2 here, and step 1 is we gotta register that name with the state, not just the bar, but, like, you gotta register the name with the state, and of course, you gotta do the same thing with the state bar. Make sure that all of your attorneys are all listed with the correct address, correct phone number,
Mhm.
and correct spelling of the new firm to the dot. So if
Yep.
there's a PC, is it P dot C or dot, like what exactly is it? Where's the commas? Because that's how we've got to have that on the Google business listing, which is the next thing we have to go and address. But we can't address the Google business listing until you've got the correct address with the post office, with the state, and with the your business license with whatever state you're in. Because
Mhm.
without that, when Google goes to triangulate and confirm that that's actually is a business and that's what it's called and this is where it is, it needs some sort of database to reference, right?
Mhm.
And so you can't get ahead of yourself and start doing the stuff that you can control, which is easy. You can jump in there and make a Google business listing with the correct address and information. But if it can't validate it, then it's never going to get verified. I mean, Lindsay, you've got way more experience in some of the challenges when you're trying to do that.
Yeah.
That's actually a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, you can really waste a lot of time by trying to do it too early if you don't have the proper documents to provide Google on the validity of your business. And then it just lengthens the process. Google can be very hard to get a hold of to, file these claims and have them get to them. And sometimes they don't at all. So then you're back to square one, deleting that first account and creating a brand new one. So yeah, it's definitely important to kind of lay the foundation with all of these steps first.
If you are just setting up a business for the first time, do it yourself. If you are swapping, or if you're trying to join or merge Google Business Listings, or you've changed your firm name, find somebody that you can hire to do that. Like,
Mhm.
'cause that just the following up to make sure that gets done. I haven't seen any firm do that right. Not just any, I haven't seen any business do that right unless they're able to create it from scratch. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, it's way more complicated than anybody thinks. Oh yeah, I can
Then
just
it's more
do that.
complicated
And
than it
then
needs
they're
to
like
be.
reading through the tutorials on Google on how to do it and getting frustrated, and it's not worth it. Definitely, I would hire a professional for some of these things for sure.
And then the question you asked about cleaning it all up. So now we've got all that done. Now there's tools out there. Yext, right? That's one. Moz. I mean, there's other
Great
tools
local.
Mhm. For citation management cleanup, and so that's just making sure that it's kind of like a batch update where you enter all of your correct information, and it goes out to find as many of these business directories, legal directories, other aggregate sites that are out there that help to organize all this data. Um, it should be able to update most of them at the same time. But what it does is it repeatedly goes back to make sure that the ones that weren't updated are then updated later, because we just don't want any inconsistent
And
information out there.
all of these citation platforms, there is still a ton of manual care that needs to go into it. Again, hiring a professional is important for this because they will notify you of some of the premium citations that you have access to that they can't possibly go in and change the name for. So having somebody go in and update those one by one manually is super important because they won't get done unless you
When
have somebody do it.
when you started Above the Bar, were you doing that by yourself?
Yeah,
Who by yourself? Like
Tim,
the
I was a one-man show.
No, who did you hand that off to first? Or had to, I don't know. That's nuts. That's
Well,
just
the manual piece of it, yes, I was doing that. Well, I want to make sure it's done correctly.
yeah.
And yeah, so, and we still, I mean, we do, our SEO team obviously handles the citations now, but our account management team is constantly reviewing our clients who they know that their name change has happened recently. And, just remind you, hey, make sure you didn't change the name on the state bar directory, or make sure you go into Avo Justia and update this, or give me the credentials and we'll get this done for you. It's so important because it
Mm.
really confuses Google if there's a wrong address, phone number, name.
Yeah, and especially when we're talking about the value of those directories and the link back to your site. If you didn't update your domain, now that valuable link that you had sitting on one of those legal directories is going to the wrong place. And that's a really important thing. Now it's more of a manual thing. You've got to log into your legal directory accounts and update that. But you got to get that link juice back.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. It can be a huge problem if you don't do all of this right away. Gosh, we could do a whole podcast just on citation management and the importance of that when changing your name, but it's definitely crucial to, run an audit yourself or have a professional run an audit of everywhere online that your old firm name, old address is located, and make sure you chip away at those one by one and quickly.
If we did a citation management episode, we'd have to run a huge disclaimer warning right across
Yeah,
the
like
middle
this
in
will be
red that said,
extremely boring. Just
yeah, we're about to
hire
dive into the weeds. So unless you like to nerd out with this, you might want to just like skip this episode.
Just hire someone to do it. Like,
So,
if you're thinking about doing this yourself, this
yeah.
is the whole podcast.
So what we call that is, my kids and I, we were like, we call that, you could have ended this movie a lot earlier,
Mhm.
right? So like we're watching Lion King, and if that lion just would have got trampled in the canyon right at the beginning,
Yeah, it would've saved us
movie over.
hour and a half. Yeah.
We didn't have to go through all that.
Yeah. It's like when I contemplate ending a book halfway through, I'm like, gosh, I already made it halfway through, but I don't want to waste another, 5 hours of my time finishing the book either.
Just end it.
You just end it. Just can't waste your time on a bad book.
So
So,
that's a good point. I mean, there will be certainly some more technical things where we can walk people through how to do some of that citation management. And
yeah, the
those are
whole nother
achievable
episode.
things
Yeah.
by intelligent professionals. You don't,
Another really
this is
boring
not rocket
topic
science.
too, that I wouldn't try doing it yourself unless you have the experience is what if you plan to keep your website? Your firm dissolves, you own the website now, but the firm name has changed.
Great. That's what we wanted, right? We
Right.
want the domain.
But there's
If
still a ton of work on the website that needs to be done to make sure. I mean, we just met with an attorney this morning who her old firm name is still in all the meta descriptions, title tags of her current site. She's wondering why her website still pops up with the old firm name. I'm like, well, it's all over in the content, in the metadata. So yeah, just making sure that all of that is cleaned up right away.
And that's almost a rebuild, right? I
Yeah.
mean, in most cases, that's going to be a rebuild, but not in all cases, but that's usually
Yeah.
what you're looking at. The money side of that point as an asset for that domain is if there is a breakup and somebody does keep that domain, to be able to have records and really detailed analytics over the last 3 to 5 years of what that website has produced. You
Mhm,
should have invoicing to know what you've paid for all of your digital marketing and
mhm,
then be able to prove out the value of that website. So if that's part of something that's being sold, whether that's, the team, the building, that website, if that website has generated $30,000 of profit over the last 5 years, there's something else there that needs to be division of assets in this business relationship.
mhm. So Google Business Profile could definitely be a huge topic, but let's dive into it a little bit. The firm dissolves. I own the Google business. What do I need to do?
So you actually have the ability to go in there and to do an update on the name if we're changing the name now.
Mhm,
Once you complete that, Google does go through a process of verification. That verification process usually includes you receiving a physical postcard from Google, typically within 4 to 10 business days is the range they give. It always seems like it's closer to 10 or 20.
They can send you a code now, can't they?
They may be able to. I've stayed out of the Google Business Profile updating for lots of good reasons.
Okay, but what happens to the reviews? My law partner has 10 negative reviews on the profile that I'm keeping.
Well, if you do nothing, those reviews are going to stick around with you forever. And so, if there's enough bad reviews in there, I mean, we've seen both things work and also both things not work. There's not a real like good clear cut answer here.
Mhm.
Like I feel like now you're trapping me
I
because no
am.
matter
I
what I
was
was going to
trying to.
say,
Yeah.
you were going to say no, you're wrong, and you'd be right because
No, we have had some success with, of, filing, claims with Google and then removing them for the attorney that has left the firm. You have to be persistent. You sometimes have to call and inquire about the claim. It will take some time. If you're patient, you can get those removed.
I mean, yeah, that's how we would handle it, but I feel like if the attorney is even moderately busy, there's just no way to keep up with all of those, going back and checking on the claim with Google because they just don't make it super easy. And
Mhm,
those reviews are damaging because people are so impatient that sometimes they won't even go in to read the reviews to read that it was about somebody who might even have passed away, right? Like there's literally nobody to hold accountable
mhm.
or the incident, involved a completely different entity because you merged and then changed the name of the Google business listing. but all they see is the star rating.
Mhm.
They don't even go into the reviews. This
Mhm.
is somebody who gets your name as a referral, and they go to look you up, and you've got a 3.0 star rating. All your bad reviews are from a partner who's passed away or not there.
Mhm. Would you recommend responding to the reviews and say this attorney is no longer with the firm, like in the meantime,
Well, you
or?
have to say something, and hopefully they'll read your response in lieu of them not being taken down by Google. And again, we've had success doing that, but it's certainly something that you don't see just the average person trying to go in there and do. But yeah,
Mhm.
definitely address it. But you don't want to turn it into any sort of accusation, or you don't want to make it worse. You don't want to start a fight because
Mhm.
from a distance, they just see two idiots fighting and can't tell who's who.
Yep. And in the meantime, while they're hopefully waiting for them to go down, the reviews to go away, I always recommend just focus on getting new reviews. Just focus on getting that number up in the meantime and burying those old ones, because if we can never get them removed, at least you're kind of building that star back up to be in the fours, and kind of burying those old ones.
That's a whole nother
Yeah.
episode right there is about reviews, diving deep on the best process and method to get them, developing review contests for staff members, getting into more of the psychological effects of a review and how it affects conversions. I mean, there's a lot there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We could talk for a couple hours just on reviews, and I have sometimes with clients. So we covered a lot though. We covered the domains, choosing a firm name, claiming your business, Google business listing, and then cleaning up the name, address, and phone number everywhere online. Stay tuned for our next episode on reviews, because we will dive deep into the world of reviews and everything that you need to know in terms of responding to them, getting them, and consistency with them,
Coercing them.
removing them. Well, thanks for listening today. It's been fun, and cheers.